evening and welcome to a special virtual celebration of Audubon Women in Conservation. My name is Ann Thompson. I am the Chief Environmental Affairs Correspondent for NBC News, and I am also the very proud and humble recipient of the 2017 Rachel Carson Award, and you can see the beautiful pendant right here around my neck. I am honored once again to be your host. I wish we were in the plaza. I wish I could feel that energy in the room because I find it so invigorating, but I am so thankful that at least we can all be together virtually. So thank you for joining us and thank you for everything that you do. This event recognizes women who are building a better future for birds, people, communities, and the places we all depend on. If anything, the events of the past year have shown us how urgently we need to act on climate change. At the same time, it's taught us how interconnected we all are. What impacts one person can harm many. And all too often, the communities hit hardest are those with the least access to resources and to power. Along with the Rachel Carson Award winners before them, tonight's honorees knew these truths long before 2020. They have dedicated their lives to creating a world that is more sustainable, more just, and equitable for all living creatures. Each has shown young women that they too can have a transformative impact in improving the health of our planet, people, and wildlife. With all this in mind, we are going to honor some extraordinary women: Kristine, McDivitt, Tompkins, Rachel's Network, and Lisa Jackson. But first, I have the pleasure of introducing you to another remarkable woman and conservation leader, Dr. Elizabeth Gray. Elizabeth joined Audubon earlier this year as the first female president and chief conservation officer in its 115-year history. I think it's about time. She has also stepped into the role of interim CEO as the search for Audubon's next leader is underway. Now, only a woman could simultaneously wear all three hats so well without a bird feather in sight. Prior to joining Audubon, Elizabeth was the global managing director of the Nature Conservancy's climate change program, and she's also a birder. She has spent 30 plus years as a dedicated conservationist, spending significant time in the field nationally and abroad. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Elizabeth Gray.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you to everyone for such a warm welcome tonight and since the moment I started at Audubon. I am so honored to join this event. I can't tell you how meaningful it is for me to join an audience of women leaders in conservation. Tonight we celebrate three extraordinary recipients of the 2021 Rachel Carson Awards: Chris Tompkins, Rachel's Network, and Lisa Jackson. I wish we could be together tonight, and I hope we are next year. As Anne shared, while I may be new to Audubon, my love of birds, nature, and our precious earth has been lifelong. In my early career days as a biologist, I spent a lot of time in the field, living in and traveling to remote areas around the world. Some of my happiest memories are my time spent in Patagonia studying Magellanic penguins, the year I spent living in a cloud forest reserve in Monteverde, Costa Rica, and meeting my husband studying migratory shorebirds in the Great Basin of California and Nevada. So why did I come to Audubon, and why now? Well, very simply, it's because Audubon's mission resonates very deeply with me, protecting birds, nature, and the places we all need today and for future generations. Coming to Audubon was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for me to return to my roots and what drew me to conservation in the first place, which is my love of birds and the natural world. Which brings me to the woman that we have to thank for bringing us all together tonight, Allison Whipple Rockefeller. Nearly 2 decades ago, Allison saw the urgent need to not only recognize and celebrate remarkable women in conservation, but also to support and mentor the Rachel Carsons of tomorrow. Like so many of us, Allison is committed to the preservation of our natural landscapes at the local, state, national, and hemispheric levels. She is the founder of Audubon Women in Conservation, the Audubon Rachel Carson Awards, and serves as the founding chair of the Rachel Carson Awards Council. She has served as a commission member for the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation under 4 governors, and is a long-standing board member of the Central Park Conservancy's Women's Committee. Please join me in welcoming Allison Rockefeller.
Dr. Gray, thank you. I look forward to working with you at Women in Conservation. We're in our 17th year. We've had 54 honorees. Ann Thompson, you're one of them from a year or two ago. And we thank you so much for being our best friend. Every year, lending your grace and expertise at our podium. And also, Ann, thank you so much for what you do at NBC News as the Environmental Affairs Chief. You've been getting out this message for quite some time, and so effectively. The underwriters tonight are Lee Strickler and Ginny Stowe. I'm really pleased to join them. Financial support like yours means everything at Audubon. But tonight is all about 3 women, great players on the world stage. And I had such a pleasure being with Chris and Fern out in Patagonia, where Chris has given the most incredible national park to the world. And earlier with Lisa Jackson in Obama's Washington as head of the EPA, and now at Apple. All 3 women I've enjoyed so much, I've respected so much, and I can't wait to hear what they have to say tonight.
Thank you, Elizabeth and Allison. Audubon is lucky to have such dedicated and talented leaders, truly women in conservation. And thank you again to all our guests for your support of Audubon's conservation efforts, including its Long Island Sound and Coastal Stewardship Program and the Audubon Women in Conservation Internship Program. You've given generously to join us tonight, and we hope that you will make another contribution. To make a donation, it's very simple. All you have to do is text Audubon, that is AUDUBON, to 243-725. That's Audubon to 243-725. I am delighted now to introduce tonight's first honoree, Kristine McDivitt Tompkins, and she has an amazing story. She is a passionate lover of wild spaces and their beauty, and Chris has worked for years to protect vast places in so many different ways. In the business realm, Chris served as CEO of Patagonia for 20 years. She led the outdoor apparel company's efforts to address and minimize its ecological impact, to transform customers into environmental advocates, and to set a new global standard for corporate responsibility. One of the greatest biodiversity philanthropists in history, Chris has secured protections for 14 million acres of land in Chile and Argentina, and listen to this, 30 million acres of sea. In 2019, through the Tompkins Conservation Foundation she founded with her late husband, Doug, Chris gave 1 million acres of land in Patagonia to the Chilean government, the largest ever donation of private land to the public. As a conservationist, Chris is driven by the question, who's missing? In other words, which native species have disappeared? Why and how can we eliminate the reason that they went extinct? Under her leadership, Tompkins Conservation and Conservación Patagonia are rewilding ecosystems by reintroducing those missing native species, such as the red and green macaw to Argentina's Iberra National Park, while also ensuring that neighboring communities prosper through conservation. Over the years, Chris has created or expanded 15 national parks and had 2 marine national parks designated. For her, access to wild spaces through these parks is a matter of social justice. The beauty of our natural world belongs to all of us. Along with that comes responsibility to care for our living earth and one another. I introduce you to Chris Tompkins.
The Chris has achieved enormous things already, but she's not somebody who sits on an achievement. She's already busy working on the next project.
When Chris talks, you can see and feel her love for nature.
Already the map of South America is different because of Chris.
This new model that Chris and Doug created of creating national parks, basically buying land and donating it to the state and rewilding it before donating it. I think that is the biggest legacy that they gave us. And they went so far, and we have to carry on with their job.
She is a source of inspiration to young and old alike. Chris, you have been and continue to be a most amazing force for conservation and for a better future for nature.
I just love to be of this generation that follows what Chris has started. I always feel like telling her that she can relax now, that we're here and that we will keep fighting for what she has fought for all her life.
Hello, everyone. I'm sorry we're not all together in the same room this year, but that seems to be our lot, at least for now. I am very honored to be with all of you who support Audubon and champion women in science. I've been so lucky in my life to have worked with a lot of women since my early 20s, running Patagonia Company, and then, of course, going to Chile and Argentina for the last 30 years. So many of our leaders have been and currently are women. So this is especially nice. Thank you to the Rachel Carson Awards Council, Allison Rockefeller. Thank you so much for honoring us in this way. I think, as we all must feel, Rachel Carson plays such a formidable role in who we've become. What should we be looking out for? What did we need to learn? How did we need to participate in the great unfolding that she was so key in discovering and articulating in a way that I think was extraordinary, and the power of her words and her determination and skill is just, it's a debt that none of us can repay. I do feel like she's sitting here on my shoulder on many days, down on some of our projects on the southern Atlantic seacoast, or down by the Beagle Channel, or up in the Gulf of Ancud on the Pacific coast of Chile. The memory and the voice of understanding what it is we're actually looking at and what's missing, and let that be the center from which your work departs. So, as I said, I owe her a great debt, and I think everybody in this virtual room, and certainly all of our team members, feel that way. So, thank you very much. And I'll leave you with this, that I think and say to myself, not every day, but most days. May I get out of bed every day and do something for those things that I love, for those things that we know to be true, to work toward a biodiversity that today is missing, that we work toward human dignity, and that we always and forever work toward beauty. Thank you very much on behalf of all of us. I wish you a good virtual afternoon.
Chris, thank you so much. You really are an inspiration to us all. Our next recipient is named after Rachel Carson herself. Rachel's Network is a community of women at the intersection of environmental advocacy, philanthropy, and leadership. Many of you belong to Rachel's Network, including our honoree Chris Tompkins and our incredible leader, the one and only Allison Rockefeller. You know, as did the network's founders 2 decades ago, that women funders can have a greater impact on our planet if we come together. Today, with more than 100 members, the network's mission is to promote women leaders who are dedicated to a safer, healthier, and more just world for all people. And they recognize that to achieve this vision, they must fund, support, and champion more women of color. Hailed by Philanthropy Women as one of the most significant funding networks in the ecofeminist space, the network co-funds a host of programs, from mobilizing activists on renewable energy to advancing the Tompkins Conservation Foundation's rewilding in southern Chile. Rachel's network has prioritized getting more women into the rooms where decisions are made, whether it's city councils or boardrooms or Congress, because if we want to have a voice in shaping the planet's future, women must have more seats at the table. Tonight, President Fern Shepard will accept the Rachel Carson Award on behalf of Rachel's Network. With more than 3 decades of experience in the environmental community, Fern has worked as an attorney for Earth Justice and the Pew Charitable Trusts. Last year, Rachel's Network celebrated its 20th anniversary, and this video honors that milestone. So congratulations to Rachel's Network and to Fern for everything that you have accomplished together, and how fitting to recognize you all tonight with the Rachel Carson Award.
Good evening, everyone. Let me begin by thanking the National Audubon Society and Women in Conservation Awards Council for recognizing Rachel's Network with this award. I'm humbled to accept it on behalf of our over 100 members, many of whom are here. It is the work of these women over 2 decades that is honored today. Thank you, Allison, for your leadership in creating this award, which reminds us of the powerful legacy of a single woman who changed the world. And congratulations to this year's other awardees. Lisa's leadership at EPA and Apple is responsible for millions living healthier lives. And Chris, with her late husband Doug and her phenomenal international staff, have done more than most governments to secure millions of acres on land and at sea for wildlife. We are honored to share this award with the two of you and the many women awardees who came before us. As you saw in the video, we take to heart Rachel Carson's words that in nature, nothing exists alone. Our founders knew that women funders could be more effective if they came together. We'd be smarter and more strategic while building friendships and deeper relationships. And we've learned that we must dramatically increase the support for women of color environmental leaders who currently receive less than 1% of all philanthropic dollars. We understand this is the only way to achieve a future that is healthy, thriving, and just for everyone and everything. Lastly, I want to thank all of you who are spending a few more hours of your life on Zoom to be here. You understand the challenges facing our planet, just as Rachel Carson did over 50 years ago. You understand our need to act, and you're engaged. We hope next year that we will be together in person. And until then, thank you again for recognizing Rachel's network, and thank you for all that you are doing for our planet.
Congratulations, Fern, and thank you to all the members of Rachel's network. Now, as you know, your support of women in conservation helps make possible Audubon's conservation efforts, including the Audubon Women in Conservation Internship Program. Unfortunately, due to COVID-related restrictions on fieldwork in 2020, Audubon could not host WIC interns. But in 2019, thanks to additional support from the Hearst Foundation, there were 5 WIC interns across New York, Connecticut, and North Carolina. And we're optimistic that we'll be able to restart the Coastal Internship Program this summer. Now, among Audubon's top priorities is providing the next generation with the tools, training, and experiences they want and need to lead the conservation movement into the future. This includes creating ladders of leadership development for young people. You're about to meet a young woman whose journey with Audubon began as an intern and became a career in conservation. But first, I'd like to introduce you to another woman leader in conservation and one who knows this young woman well. Jillian Liner is the Director of Conservation for Audubon, New York, and has been with Audubon for over 20 years. She oversees conservation programs to improve the health and resiliency of New York's priority coastal habitats, forests, waterways, and associated bird species. And Jillian is the co-author of important bird areas of New York, Habitats Worth Protecting. Please join me in welcoming Jillian Liner.
Thank you, Anne. It's a pleasure to be here tonight. I also wish we were all in person, but here we are, and I'm thrilled to introduce you to our next speaker. Shelby Casas is the Coast Program Associate based out of the Theodore Roosevelt Sanctuary and Audubon Center in Oyster Bay, New York, on Long Island. While she started in this position in March, Shelby has been with Audubon since 2018, working 3 seasons in Connecticut as a coastal waterbird technician, including 1 year as our Women in Conservation intern. Originally from Dallas, Shelby graduated from the state's first all-girls public school, which is part of the Young Women's Preparatory Network. For college, she attended Clarkson University in upstate New York in the Adirondacks and near the Canadian border. It couldn't have been more different from Dallas, but she flourished in that new environment. The constant access to nature and the time she spent in the Adirondacks confirmed where she was headed, a career in conservation. Not long after graduation, she accepted that position with Connecticut to monitor shorebirds, and there for the first time, Shelby had a woman as a manager and a mentor. Soon she was training young women and supporting them as they learned the skills they needed. And she returned to that position for 2 more years. Fast forward to 2021, and now she's full-time with us, taking care of our shorebirds on Long Island, teaching more young people how to become field technicians, and building and strengthening our critical partnerships. Please join me in welcoming Shelby Casas.
Thank you, Jillian, and thank you all for joining us here tonight, and thank you for your continued support of Audubon Women in Conservation. I'm so grateful to have joined you in 2019 when I was a WIC intern, and now tonight that I'm a full-time staff member. When I was going to college, moving from Dallas to Northern New York, I knew I wanted to work with animals. I ended up in a lab with a professor working with golden wing warblers, and that's where my passion for birds began. But while I was at university, I did notice that a lot of my professors, especially in the conservation field, were men. And that a lot of the people that were working in their labs were young women. And this disparity had an effect on me. When you're getting started in the conservation field, you always need somebody to teach you the ropes. And I often found myself nervous to ask my professors questions. That's why I was so excited to work under Corey Folsom O'Keefe, the Director of Bird Conservation at Audubon, Connecticut. She's an amazing leader, and she takes such great care of her team out there. I enjoyed and I loved working with them. She is so great at fostering healthy shorebirds, coastlines, and communities. And in my second year working for her as the WIC intern, she asked if I wanted to manage our college intern. And this was my first time overseeing a young woman who was just getting started in the conservation field, and I was so excited. When I was learning my field experience, I was often being taught by men much older and usually much farther along in their careers. And I wanted to provide this young woman a different experience than I had had and allow her to feel comfortable in asking questions. Now I continue to mentor young people and interns, both in Connecticut and here in New York now. And I am so excited to provide them a different experience than I have had, and hopefully a much more positive experience, allowing them to see themselves in more people in the conservation field and even in potential leadership roles. When I was in college, I worked with songbirds, but when I started working for Audubon, I started working with shorebirds, and I fell in love with them. There's so much work that goes into shorebird management. They're the perfect balance between people and nature. They often reside in areas that are fully all over with economics, politics, and climate change, and they're often the perfect balance of birds, communities, and people, and I love working with them. And it's why I'm here tonight. And that's why I want to thank you for allowing me to do what I love and to pursue working with shorebirds, learning from other women in the conservation field, mentoring the future leaders, and bringing in more voices into the conservation space. So thank you. And I'm hoping one day, not far from now, it's common to see women leading conservation. Thank you.
Thank you, Shelby. We are so happy that Audubon has been able to grow and evolve alongside you. We can't wait to see all that you will achieve. Shelby's story echoes with many of us. So that you could play a role, even a leadership role as a woman, and make a real difference. Who inspired you? Showed you that you were among a long line of women conservationists and that many more would succeed you. In this moment, we have so much potential, responsibility, and urgency to act. Our collective voices across generations need to be heard. I hope that Shelby's story, along with all that you're experiencing this evening, inspires you to step up once more for women leaders in conservation of all ages. Tonight, we are hoping to raise an additional $20,000 so we can support more young women like Shelby. $20,000 would allow us to host 2 more women in conservation internships. No amount is too small. As you can see on the screen, to make a donation, please text Audubon. That's AUDUBN to the number 243725. Thank you again for all that you do.
Thank you, Jillian and Shelby, for sharing your stories and also reminding us just why we are here tonight. Women have always been conservationists, stewards of the health and safety of our families, our communities, and the places we call home. We just haven't been recognized as such, but now here we are. And we see not only how important it is to celebrate incredible leaders like our honorees, but also to pave the way for those who will walk through the door behind us. And our next honoree has certainly done that. Please meet Lisa Jackson. Throughout her trailblazing career to protect our shared planet, Lisa has always centered people, knowing that it's the path to the greatest impact. Trained as a chemical engineer, Lisa began her career at the Environmental Protection Agency, where she worked on the federal Superfund remediation program. The EPA's mission resonated with her, its role to protect human health and the environment. To her, if engineers played a role in creating these contaminated sites, which disproportionately affect communities of color, they should also take part in the cleanup. After 16 years with the EPA, the state of New Jersey came calling, asking Lisa to serve as commissioner of its Department of Environmental Protection. In 2008, New Jersey Governor John Corzine named her his chief of staff. But Lisa soon returned to Washington as then President-elect Barack Obama nominated her as administrator of the EPA, the first Black person in that role. With Lisa at the helm from 2009 to 2013, the EPA made environmental justice a priority. She led the agency's efforts to reduce greenhouse gases, provide clean air and water, and expand outreach to historically underserved communities on environmental issues. Since then, as Vice President of Environmental Policy and Social Impact at Apple, Lisa continues to center people in all that she oversees. She is the force behind the company's commitment to make its entire business carbon neutral by 2030 and to leverage Apple's learnings and influence to bring others along. And through her leadership of Apple's racial equity and justice initiative, education policy, product accessibility, and government affairs, she brings this truth to bear. Inequity and climate change are not separate challenges, and they will not abide by separate solutions. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Lisa Jackson.
I was Lisa's deputy at EPA, and it was one of the most satisfying and great partnerships in my working career. She really opened EPA's eyes like no one else could about the disparities that exist in environmental protection and how to bring into the conversation communities and businesses about issues like environmental justice and how to more equitably distribute the benefits of the environmental protection program. There was one example of our working together that brings together some of the Audubon interest as well as EPA's, and it was a really horrific experience, to be honest with you, particularly because it was affecting Lisa's hometown of New Orleans. It was the Gulf oil spill. And EPA was the co-lead for responding to that oil spill. And every day for 5 months, Lisa and I were on the phone with all the different responders trying to make sure that we were doing things the right way to protect wildlife, to protect fisheries. All through it, Lisa's leadership, Lisa's vision and her bravery in making the decisions that were necessary really came true. I'll say in her current job, Apple is really lucky to have a person like Lisa who is strong, compassionate, brave, and full of integrity. So congratulations again, Lisa. It's great to see you getting this recognition.
Hello. Thank you all for being here. And tremendous thanks to Allison and the Rachel Carson Awards Council for all of your tireless work to make today happen. I'm deeply honored to receive this award and to join this fearless group of women prioritizing the protection of our shared planet and the well-being of all of its people. The environmental movement has always benefited from the experience and consciousness of women, especially women of color, and my career is marked by countless testaments to this. At every stage, it has been the guidance, the camaraderie, and the inspiration of those women that has supported and propelled me to continue in this work. During my tenure at EPA, in fact, we joked that our name should have been the She-PA. We were united by a love for the planet and by our shared understanding that centering people was the path to environmental policy that could have the greatest positive impact. It has been an honor to continue this work at Apple through our work to fight climate change, conserve our planet's valuable resources, and ensure our products are safe for those who use and make them. With every effort, we're seeking to change the way we operate and to demonstrate a path forward for our industry. Our work is more urgent than ever, but our mission is also as clear as it's ever been. I'm honored to be in the fight with so many of you amazing women. Thank you for this recognition and for all you do.
Thank you, Lisa. I know I'm fired up to keep fighting for the planet, and I'm sure all of you are too. But there's more. Next up is a conversation with 4 fearless women, our 3 honorees, and Dr. Elizabeth Gray, who will moderate this panel. Please join me in welcoming back Dr. Elizabeth Gray.
Thank you, Anne, and thank you to everyone for joining us tonight. We are so grateful for your support. I'm honored to share the virtual stage with our 3 incredible award winners, so please welcome them back with me. Tompkins, co-founder and president of Tompkins Conservation, Rachel's Network, represented by President Fern Shepard, and Lisa Jackson, Vice President of Environment, Policy, and Social Initiatives at Apple. Hello, Chris, Fern, and Lisa. What a thrill to have an opportunity to speak with you this evening. Thank you so much for everything that you have done for women, for conservation, and for our planet. We owe each of you our deepest gratitude, and we're really looking forward to our conversation today. So Chris, my first question is for you. For the last 30 years, through Tompkins Conservation, you have not only protected and restored millions of acres in Chile and Argentina, you have also reintroduced missing species known as rewilding. Why is the presence of native animal species so important to the sustainability of healthy ecosystems and communities? And why is the process of rewilding so difficult?
Well, I think the answer of difficulty is easier, so I'll leave that to the end. Well, firstly, the absence of a keystone species within an ecosystem never allows it to be fully functioning. I think everybody in this room knows that. And the reintroduction of wolves in Yellowstone, where my sister and I were 2 days ago, is the great model, certainly the greatest American model of this. So that's the first thing. And the second thing is that there is intrinsic value to all life. And I think our teams share this, of course they do. During this period when we humans are culturally distanced from nature, I suppose that we're completely motivated to try to stem the tide of the loss of species, the loss of territory that's been converted to production, until such time that we either are forced to or voluntarily go back and find our way back to our full relationship with nature, that we are part of a circle of life and not at the center of it.
Well, thank you,
The
Chris.
difficulty.
We really appreciate it.
The difficulty.
Yeah.
Rewilding extirpated keystone species is some days you're ecstatic. The first red and green-shouldered macaws flying free after 130 years of being absent. That's on the good side. And then the other days you get up and you're hit with something, and tapirs are dying from a form of brucellosis. So politically, socially, scientifically, culturally, every species is different, but they all have their challenges as you bring them back into the system when they've been gone, in many cases, for almost a century. So it's good news, bad news in the rewilding world, but it's so worth it.
It is clearly so close to your heart, and the world thanks you for everything that you are doing on rewilding's behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fern, my next question is for you. I want to first start by congratulating you on Rachel's Network 20th anniversary that you celebrated last year. So today we have a number of widely known women philanthropists like Chris, who are making a tremendous impact through their giving to conservation and to many other important causes. So 2 decades ago, it was a revolutionary idea to bring women together at the intersections of environmental advocacy, philanthropy, and leadership. So what has changed since then, and what has not?
Well, thank you, Elizabeth. It's an honor to be here with all three of you. All three of you are inspirations for us and for me, and so many of our members who are joining us today. And you're right, a lot has changed in the last 20 years at that intersection of environmental advocacy and philanthropy and leadership. So let me start first with what hasn't changed. When Rachel's Network was founded 20 years ago, it was about bringing women together and about building relationships, and the recognition that in that bringing together, we could be more effective. And we still believe that to be true, and we still work. That's still a central part of our work. And like the three of you and the women and men who are joining us virtually today, you all care about the natural world. And our members feel the same way. They are wise stewards in their personal life and in their professional life, and they want to be wise stewards as funders. And Rachel's Network is the one place where women can come together with the same goals, the same interests, the same values. They can learn together and they can become better philanthropists. And so that part hasn't changed. What has changed? So on the one hand, we know that the environmental problems that we all face are significantly worse than 20 years ago. Science has made that clear to us. On the other hand, what we know is that to be successful, we're going to have to include a lot more people in this fight for a better environment. We've got to amplify all the voices out there that are calling for change. We need to heed the voices of the women and people who are most affected by environmental harm. At Rachel's Network, we're trying to do that through our Catalyst Award, which supports and amplifies women leaders of color so that they can continue on their leadership journey. We're working to elect more women. We're working to support women who are already at the forefront of leadership, whether they're running national environmental organizations like you, Elizabeth, or whether they're running a small local organization. Our members are committed to doing all that they can to uplift women, wherever they are, in whatever way we can, because what we know is that bringing them together is really where our power is, and it's where our hope lies.
Well, thank you so much, Fern. So clear that when women come together, they can accomplish more than they can alone, for sure. And the sum is greater than the parts. So thank you. Lisa, I have a question for you. So like me, you are a scientist by training. So you bring that lens to your work at the EPA and now at Apple. But you also understand that science alone cannot solve for the two biggest environmental crises that we're facing right now, the biodiversity crisis and the climate crisis. So to center and achieve positive impact, we really need to center people, I think, in how we address these two monumental changes. And so at Apple, you're leading the company's commitment to make its entire business carbon neutral by 2030. How are you centering people as Apple works to achieve this ambitious goal? And what are some of the greatest obstacles that you are encountering in doing this?
Yeah, thanks, Elizabeth. And again, thank you for this amazing honor and to join these extraordinary women. Um, you know, one of the things I loved about Apple from day one, actually before day one, because I was a customer, was that we make products with people in mind. And so one of the strategies we had from the beginning was to engage our employees and our customers around the world in this journey with us. Now, to date, a lot of our work has been pretty scientific and technical, switching to renewable energy for our data centers, running our entire company. Our company right now runs 100% clean energy and is carbon neutral as of 2020. So when we talk about switching to carbon neutral by 2030, we're really talking about our supply chain, right? We're talking about hundreds of companies around the world that aren't Apple. They happen to do business with Apple. And we're talking about our customers who have to charge their devices and they're drawing power from a grid somewhere. So those are the two places we're engaged right now, engaged with our suppliers, and that is human work. That is working with the people in those, in manufacturing, one of the hardest places to convert, to show them how clean energy is not just better and great for the planet, but also better for their business, for their future outlook in business, and then with our customers. The other thing I'll say is, during this past year, we also faced the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor killings and the upheaval around race that happened in our country and other countries as well. And so one of the things we decided to do this year was to form an impact accelerator to accelerate, to incubate businesses owned by Black and Brown entrepreneurs who are working in the climate change space. Because we want everyone to get the benefits of climate change. Of course, we'll all get the benefit of a better climate, but how about some of the benefit of the tremendous amount of economic investment that needs to happen in order for us to switch over? So, we have tons of ideas like that. We're also doing tons of work in education. Apple has a long history in education as well. But I think, when we talk about the planet and we talk about people, when we talk about conservation and nature, it's reminding ourselves every day, as I used to as head of the EPA, that there's no regulation anywhere that's really going to protect this planet. It's people who do it, who are motivated by love of place or sometimes a fear of the future.
Thank you so much, Lisa. You said it well. We are the ones who hold the planet in our hands, and the ones that will set the future for those who come after us. So thank you for everything that you're doing. It's very inspirational, all three of you. So I do have a question for all three of you, and you can answer in whichever order you choose. 60 years ago, Rachel Carson was a pioneer. And many of us are where we are today because of her. Each of you has been a leader, and a leader in spaces that have traditionally held fewer women and even fewer women of color. So wherever you've been, how have you carried Rachel Carson with you? And as Chris mentioned in her acceptance remarks, how or when does she sit on your shoulder?
Well, I'm happy to tell you that, as I said, she is on my shoulder at times, but when she really shows up is when things become really tough, that the wind is in our face rather than at our backs. I think about her writing and then getting Silent Spring published and bracing for the controversy that might follow in her work. And I've felt this so many times that really and truly, she's a marker for choosing to be clear and honest before being popular and making people feel comfortable because they don't need to change their lives, that everything's going to be fine when they're not fine. So she is my North Star when things get really rough, we can do this. There have been people doing this kind of things long before us, and they will do it long after us. And so that's what I think that she represents to me and to all of the teams.
I would echo much of what Chris said. You know, I marvel at the clarity of her writing and the beauty of her writing, and at her ability to see a future that she didn't live to see, whether it was anticipating the loss of species that might lead to a silent spring, or even 60 years ago, predicting climate change from the burning of fossil fuels. But most of all, as Chris said, it was her courage. She knew what was right. She knew what was true. She had the science behind her, and she was determined to tell her story, knowing that she would be subject to great criticism, scorn, ridicule, disdain. And but she kept at it. She was determined to make sure that the world knew what she knew, and that courage is something that I could only hope to hold, and I think she's just was a trailblazer for all of us for that reason.
So lovely, Fern and Chris. I'll just add the other. She released Silent Spring the year I was born. So it is remarkable to me that by the time I was old enough to read, because of her work, I cared about the planet. I remember there's a story that is true that, when I was 8 years old, my teacher made us write a letter to President Nixon, and I wrote about the environment. And I know whether, I had not read the book by that point. It was a little heavy for an 8-year-old, but I know by that point it had permeated all our consciousness. So I think what I take from that, one way to carry her is actually two ways: to listen. It's motivating that so much of her work, maybe because she was a public servant for such a long part of her career, was about listening to citizens and amplifying their voices to power. I like to think that's part of what we can all do, and certainly what I aspire to do. And then, the second part is to bring someone else along. She brought me along, whether she knew she was or not. And so, the wonderful work that Audubon is doing with the summer fellows, the work that we're all doing to fund and bring along the next generation of women and diverse women, I think is extraordinarily important and an honor to her. I hope it is.
Absolutely. I mean, it's clear the legacy of Rachel Carson lives on in all of us in different ways, but they have a lot of similar threads. So thank you for that. That goes to my next question for all three of us. Along this line of legacy, what do each of you want your legacy to be? As we think about the next generation and the fact that they're going to inherit the planet from us, what world do you want to leave for them?
Wow, I'll go first since then it's easier because everyone else can think. Look, I think all of us worry a lot about the legacy we're leaving our children and grandchildren with climate change, with politics that unfortunately is not able to address tough challenges, but maybe just at best postpone them, and sometimes maybe even finger point through them, but not address them. So I think that's what we all have to do. Women have a capacity to collaborate and work together and see past a lot of the noise in the system. And so I hope that my work at EPA was about public health as a public servant, and I hope my work at Apple is about companies proving that you don't have to choose between being successful economically and being good for the planet, additive to our planet's health.
Well, I would add that I hope that I can stand as a little shadow from those who really have been working on these things, like Rachel, like so many people. And if I can just step up to the line and be on the front line with people like all of you and so many others who have come before us, but those who are coming right up after us, Greta and these movements they're starting, just the last year, how much we've learned about making sure that we all step forward. And I suppose I would take, and my husband Doug, who was really, it's impossible to talk about anything I've done in conservation or in my business life with Ivo and Melinda Chenard, Doug Tompkins. I dragged them all with me and all the teams and all the species, because I want my legacy to be that I'm on this team. I don't want to be on the other team. I'm on this one, and I'm going down as a member of this team. And I don't really have another legacy. I was pitching for the right team. And I hope it's an enormously global team filled with girls and boys and 80-year-olds, and I don't care, but we're all pitching in the right direction. That's all I care about.
And I'm just going to add that from the perspective of Rachel's network, our mission is to promote women to build a healthy and thriving environment. And we're not going to be there by the end of my life, as my kids are very fond of reminding me. But I do think what we can do is make the environmental movement a full, inclusive, and welcoming movement for all women. And that's something we really can achieve in our lifetime. So that if you just look at the progress we've made in the last 20 years, look at who's leading environmental organizations, big, small, local, international, and look at how many are women leaders now. Look at the women leaders in government now, Gina McCarthy, Lisa Jackson, who have blazed trails for the women who are going to follow them. Look at the women who are scientists, the women who are staff in environmental groups, on boards, in leadership there. As Chris said, leaders of the climate movement, from Greta to Gina McCarthy. And honestly, in the last several months, one of the most heartwarming things I've seen is to have a Native American woman leading the Department of Interior in our country. That is amazing to me. I think in our lifetime, we can achieve a fully inclusive environmental movement that welcomes all women. And if we can, if their vision for a healthy and just and thriving planet is met, we're going to be on the right road.
Well, thank you so much, Chris, Fern, and Lisa, for an amazing conversation this evening. I want to thank everyone for joining us tonight and for your support, your generous support of Audubon's Women in Conservation program. I hope I have the opportunity to meet each of you soon, and I'm looking forward to being in person hopefully next year. So I am now going to turn it back to Anne to close our program this evening.
Elizabeth, Chris, Fern, and Lisa, thank you for an absolutely fascinating discussion. It's so energizing to hear your perspectives at this moment when there is such potential and such urgency for bold moves toward a sustainable and just future for all living creatures, especially when we have so many change makers in this virtual room. Tonight, remember Rachel Carson's words: "Those who contemplate the beauty of the earth find reserves of strength that will endure as long as life lasts." My charge to you: let's use those strengths and fight like hell to protect it. Thank you all for joining us tonight to support these phenomenal women in conservation, and to tomorrow's Rachel Carsons. I hope you will be inspired to making an additional contribution by texting Audubon to 243-725. That's Audubon to 243-725. While we missed gathering together in person, we hope to really see you once again next year. Good night.